New work, The Wise Conquer People with Strength, welcome to read. Faced with the great changes that have occurred in the past 360,000 years of the 9 great ancestors, Guiwujiu, who carries high expectations, is walking on the trajectory set by the sect, or jumping out of the cage and stirring the wheel of fate in the purple micro-world, and even in the world of heaven and earth. Almost 1 million words, build a book friend group. 7749911037 keywords of the novel. Wanfa Wujiu pop-up window, Wanfa Wujiu TXT complete collection download, Wanfa Wujiu latest chapter reading. Chapter 1. Introduction. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1 Introduction. The sky is clear and turbid, the earth is moved to lingu, and the culture is flourishing. Every practitioner says that the body of a person is the essence of 2 or 5, the 7 orifices are ready, and the spirit is bright and open. Since the fractal of the 2 gases and the formation of embryos like eggs, the 3 talents have been established. The human body can naturally connect with heaven and earth, and the method of cultivating qi is unknown for hundreds of millions of years. To this day, no matter which sect is registered, it can only be traced back to 360,000 years ago at most. For 360,000 years, this was like an invisible iron wall blocking all knowledge, burying all secrets, leaving behind only fragments of paper and ruins. 360,000 years ago, few people knew what kind of stories existed in ancient times. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. The Founding of Spiritual Forms by the Machine Outside Heaven, Part 1. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. The Founding of Spiritual Forms by the Machine Outside Heaven, Part 1, Yueheng Sect, Nanping Mountain, Panlu Peak, First Class Inghua Cave, Shuangyo Cave. A pair of bronze-color pattern qi-nourishing furnaces, measuring several feet high, were placed on either side of the dough, and 2 streams of green smoke swirled and gently leaped. The 8 purple jade corals placed on the walls of the cave are shining brightly, making the scenery in the cave seem to be bathed in moonlight. In addition, the other furnishings in the cave are actually quite simple, except for a stone bed, a stone table, a stone stool, a cattail, a pool of water, and a few scattered jade slips scattered on the ground. There are 2 stone gates on the inner side of the cave, which must be a darkroom with a different purpose. This minimalist arrangement complements the cool brilliance of the pearl, but instead highlights a vague immortal family atmosphere. But if someone enters the cave, they will inevitably find a round bead about 3 zhang above the ground, the size of a chicken, deep blue and close to ink. This thing is dull and unremarkable, and it is easy to overlook it when scanning the cave. But as long as a person is inside the cave, they will inevitably feel a strange discomfort. By carefully observing, one can surely find the source of this discomfort, which is this unnamed pearl. This pearl is dark and magnificent, without even the crystal clear and moisturizing meaning of jade materials. On the contrary, it is gloomy and stagnant, as if it reveals a faint distance from this cave, and even from this world. Looking up, there were some bright lights shining near this pearl. This ink bead didn't shine, but upon closer inspection, it turned out to be a hole drilled into the wall of this cave, revealing a faint glimpse of the sky shining through. The size of the cave opening is surprisingly comparable to the diameter of this inexplicable pearl, which is only a few feet away. It should be noted that the practitioner's cave is the fundamental place of their own home. Unlike ordinary people who reside in mountains and rivers, it has exotic treasures for lighting and the flow of spiritual energy from the earth's veins, and requires careful protection from forbidden formations. It is impossible to drill through the secret place of cultivation and create a leaking place. Looking at the edge of the hole on the wall again, small stone fragments are mottled and peeling off, without any decoration, not like artificial. It seems that some external force pierced through the cave and caused damage. Guiwujiu sat upright in the cave. Although in a sitting position, he has a handsome face and a straight lumbar spine. At this moment, Guiwujiu's right index finger lightly tapped in the air, his lips tightly closed, and a vertical, chuan, pattern twisted between his eyebrows, as if encountering something difficult to decide and unable to make up his mind. The green smoke in the copper furnace rose up and transformed into various strange states, as if it were just like his current intention, changing and confusing, unable to reach a consensus. After an unknown amount of time, Guiwujiu's mesmerizing eyes gradually condensed into a sharpness, transitioning from flickering to clarity, from chaos to strength, as if he had made some important decision in the end. In an instant, like a flying dragon nodding its eyes and its spirit returning to its original state, his thin body suddenly exuded a sense of aloofness and enterprising spirit. Take this step. Today is the end of the 12-year agreement. You are the chance of the Yueheng sect, and the Yueheng sect is also your chance. In a hurry for 12 years, the resounding sound still lingers in my ears. Guiwujiu lifted his head and glanced deeply at the nameless ink bead hanging above his head. He resolutely turned around and sat down cross-legged. His right ring finger flashed with a purple jade ring finger, and a small amber bottle appeared in his hand. Guiwujiu pulled out the bottle stopper and poured 7 pills into his palm in a row. This pill is slightly smaller than longan, with a crimson color throughout the body and crystal clear. There is also a dense texture on top that resembles the rings of an old tree, and from a distance, it appears to be a shallow pattern. As soon as I started, a strong and intoxicating aroma wafted through my nose. He took a deep breath and swallowed these 7 pills, facing southeast, holding his breath and calming down. If this scene is seen by ordinary cultivators, it will surely be greatly shocking. This pill is called EP1-10. According to pharmacology, it was originally a top-notch pill for cultivators in the true Qi realm to nourish the vitality of the body. However, although the efficacy of this pill is 3 or 4 times stronger than any other pill of the same level, its main medicine, Guiwujiu grass, was originally the main medicine of several 5-grade spiritual pills, so its refining cost is tens of thousands of times higher than other pills with similar functions. It is important to note that the 5th-grade spiritual pill is a spiritual medicine used by Yuaning Zhenren. The cost of tens of thousands of times is only 3 to 4 times stronger than the efficacy of this, EP1-10, which is not practical and magnificent, can be imagined. However, there is another unique feature of the EP1-10, which is its extremely stable nature, capable of preserving it for thousands of years without deteriorating its appearance. Therefore, within the immortal realm, this pill gradually lost its practical value and became a larger denomination currency, like gold and silver in the mortal world. Guiwujiu swallowed 7 EP1 pills in a row, as if in the common world, he used silver tickets as firewood and hay, and put them on the stove to burn, creating a shocking experience. After 2 or 3 hours, Guiwujiu's whole body was stirred with breath, and the clouds were steaming. His face was either blue or white, purple or red, and he could not change. A long shirt swelled up with a thumping sensation, like a windbox that had already inflated its energy, and it turned out that the cultivation had reached a critical moment. The endless rising airflow in the entire cave, enveloped by the soft light emitted by the purple jade coral, surged from east to west, cascading back and forth, as if a raging dragon was exhaling its breath. It was very magnificent. The first step for cultivators to enter the path of immortality is to change tendons, forge bones, unblock meridians, and sense qi, known as the 4 passes of quenching the fan. This is the first level of entry, whether it is a Xianmen sect like Yueheng sect or a last-tier sect of 4 or 5 levels, the methods are very similar. A cultivator, whether wise or foolish, can pass 1 level a year. After 4 years of hard work, one can cross the threshold of entry and officially enter the realm of immortality. After completing the quenching process and stepping onto the Xianmen Avenue, one after another is the true Qi realm, spirit form realm, golden Dan realm, and Yuaning realm. Cultivating to the level of Yuaning, with a lifespan of over 1,000 years, even in first and second class sects, it is still a crucial figure, and can be said that the world can be reached. As for the realm after Yuaning, it is not very clear to the vast majority of cultivators. However, the cultivator of Yueheng sect vaguely knew that he would face a major decision and division thereafter. 2 more hours passed, and Guiwujiu's aura all over his body grew stronger and stronger. If it had been like a bellows steamer deflating just now, it would have been like a raging sea tide, with an extremely terrifying momentum. In fact, what is revealed at this moment is only a slight breath overflowing from the 7 orifices and pores. Within the 4 limbs of Guiwujiu, it is like a raging dragon, surging up and down, and the impact force it receives is even stronger than 100 times. However, this strong force is completely blocked by this physical barrier, unable to flow out, and can only circulate in this way. At this point, the scene before us is already very clear. Even experienced cultivators can see that Guiwujiu's current martial arts actions are truly the manifestation of the true chi-like tide phenomenon when attempting to break through the 9th peak of the first level of cultivation, the true chi state. Guiwujiu is attempting to break through the spiritual realm. Truly stepping onto the path of immortality reveals the gap in family background. As the scattered cultivators and the declining sects, they have devoted their entire lives to cultivating until the 9th level of true chi is fully achieved, seeking opportunities to overcome obstacles, and are already outstanding. However, most of the lower disciples of the Yueheng sect crossed the threshold of true chi within 20 years. For this generation, there is a common saying that goes, 20 years to break through the 9-fold barrier. The disparity in the level and aptitude of the Dharma sects in the Immortal Cultivation sect is even greater than this. But if one thinks that the speed of cultivation is no faster than this, then it may not be so. Within the Yueheng sect, there is a place full of highly qualified cultivators who can break through the 9 levels of true chi at a speed far beyond the ordinary disciples who have broken through the 9 levels in 20 years. Ordinary people can only enter the Tao at the age of 10. If it takes 4 years to break through the 4 levels of quenching the mortal world, and another 20 years to overcome the 9 levels of true chi, it will take at least 30.4 to 5 to reach the realm of spiritual form. And seeing the young man Guiwujiu trying to break through the barrier, it was evident that he was only around 20 years old. According to the saying of, breaking through the 9 levels in 20 years, this person needs to start practicing from the mother's womb in order to have such incredible speed. This is obviously impossible. In the eyes of those who know the foundation of the Yueheng sect, the identity of Guiwujiu is actually about to be revealed. The Yueheng sect has been passed down for 360,000 years, with sects and families within the sect, and has been passed down for millions of generations. They are all mixed together like a big web, making it difficult to sort out the details. The descendants of cultivators have a much higher chance of possessing superior spiritual roots than ordinary people. As the rulers of the 4 continents and 6 seas, the Yueheng sect has dozens of times more advanced cultivators than the top-tier sects, making it a huge immortal seedling base, with no shortage of talented individuals. But Yuehengzong was not satisfied with this. There are also dedicated elder Yufang in the sect, who travels across 4 continents and 6 seas, observing chi and fortune, debating spiritual mechanisms, and searching for beautiful seeds. Those below the 10 major gates in the 4 continents and 6 seas who discover spiritual root qualifications above the 4th level are not allowed to hide them privately, and they are gradually released until they reach the Yueheng sect. In addition, the Yueheng sect also has a unique treasure called esophageal spirit fish, which has always been under the control of the sect's master. This object is extremely sensitive to the peerless Taoist species that are hidden within the English and Chinese culture, as well as pure gold. Even elders in the golden elixir and Yuanying realms may overlook such extraordinary talents, but they cannot escape the eye of this treasure. This fish wandered around in the mortal world, and upon discovering such a person, it was abducted into the sect. Many talented and beautiful individuals have gathered here and gathered in one place, named Chongshao Pavilion. The Chongshao Pavilion has always had only a few dozen people, and the true Qi realm cultivation technique practiced by its disciples is actually the 9 Yuan book, which evolved from the secret technique of our sect, the Tongling manifestation true form diagram. This book can be regarded as the most true Qi realm cultivation technique in the world. In the fastest 3 years and 6 months, one can cross the realm of true Qi and step into spiritual form. Guiwujiu is the disciple of Chongshao Pavilion. Micro tip. From a timeline perspective, the first 15 chapters and 5 plot paragraphs are actually plots within a day. The rhythm is too slow. A statement of 10 lines at a glance may be tasteless. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. The Founding of Spiritual Forms by the Machine Outside Heaven, Part 2. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. The Founding of Spiritual Forms by the Machine Outside Heaven, Part 2. The Chongshao Pavilion holds a significant position in the Yueheng sect, serving as the cornerstone of this sect system. The fundamental method of Yueheng sect is a secret technique called Tongling Manifestation True Form Diagram, which was born 360,000 years ago. This technique is actually the ultimate secret, pointing directly to the main road, and can be regarded as the foundation of Zhenzong and the foundation of establishing a sect. The countless other Dharma methods are all the changes and annotations of their branches, accumulated during the process of practicing this scripture, and fused into one family. But start directly by comprehending this scripture. The realization of the mystery leads to the realization of the Great Way, but it is both difficult and challenging. Those who have great perseverance, great wisdom, and great opportunities cannot do it. For 360,000 years, there have been only a few hundred people who have not relied on others, observed the true scriptures, and surpassed the realm of Yuaning. There are only over 10 people who have first glimpsed the charm of the Tao and reached the realm of great power above the primordial infant. There are many cultivators who were originally exceptionally talented, but have stopped before the golden elixir, which is truly breathtaking. Therefore, inheriting the method of previous annotations is the choice of the vast majority of Yueheng disciples, and this is an easy and practical path. But everything has its advantages and disadvantages. Since we have inherited the path of our predecessors, it is difficult to break through the shackles of our predecessors. Practicing a technique that was transferred by a certain senior, one's own cultivation level can at most reach a level comparable to that of that senior and cannot be surpassed. In this way, the level of the cultivation method practiced by the later cultivators is an important factor that determines their ultimate achievement. To gain a glimpse of the Great Road, one must cultivate the techniques left behind by the true ruler who opened up the path. If the method of cultivation is inherited from the cultivators who have reached the realm of golden elixir and yuanying since their cultivation, such disciples are called the unique lineage of the outer mansion. This generation is the vast majority of the Yueheng sect, who broke through the 9 passes in 20 years, referring to the disciples of the Yueheng sect's other mansions. If the method of cultivation is passed down from a cultivator who has practiced to the great power of a true ruler, then their identity is the true lineage of the inner palace. This generation has a very small number of people, but they are the true backbone of the Yueheng sect that has been passed down to this day. If one does not rely on others and directly studies the original scripture of the spiritual manifestation true form diagram, with the intention of paving their own path, then it belongs to the seeking the path of the Tao. However, this road can be called the eternal path, with such a rare number of people that even the 4 words, generation is not lacking, cannot be considered. For example, at present, there is no disciple of the Yueheng sect who seeks the path of one lineage. The more advanced the path of cultivation, the greater the amount of external resources spent on it. The almost extinct seeking the way is nothing more than a disciple who cultivates the true secret techniques of the inner realm and intends to glimpse the mysteries of the upper realm, consuming resources that are tens of millions of times higher than those of other sects outside the realm. If every disciple of the Yueheng sect were to choose for themselves, then there is no doubt that everyone would only wish to practice the inner realm true transmission technique passed down by the powerful generation through the passage, and no one would be willing to practice the outer realm unique transmission technique that stops at the golden core and yuanying realms. Of course, reality cannot be like this. The Chongshao Pavilion was established for this reason. The disciples who step into the spiritual realm in the Chongsha Pavilion are selected from the top 3 in the True Transmission Quan Selection Conference every 3 years, and become True Transmission disciples. Having obtained the title of True Disciple, one can choose the most suitable sect for oneself on the way to the realm of great power in more than 10 families of our sect, and officially step into the list of Inner Palace True Teachings. Of course, one can also choose to take the path of seeking the Tao. However, within the Yueheng sect, no one has chosen this path for over 3,000 years. At this point, the breakthrough of Guiwujiu seems to have reached an extremely critical moment. The fluctuating atmosphere inside the cave has gradually calmed down, and the airflow is slightly faint. The radiance emitted by the purple jade coral appears much brighter, and for a moment it is hazy and faint, like a spark in the mist. However, although Guiwujiu still sat with his eyes closed, sweat beads kept falling from his eyebrows, indicating that he was not relaxed. The weakening of the external scattered breath is due to the further consolidation of the broad and rich vitality in its body. The pressure that Guiwujiu experiences in his body has actually increased several times. The originally surging tide of true energy seemed to have turned into a thick and turbid sediment, like a broom made of refined iron constantly washing away his flesh, and the pain in it exceeded any torture in the mortal world. Half an hour later, the true chi, like mud and sand, was further compressed, like a ball of molten iron, circulating along the 100 meridians of Guiwujiu's body. Wherever you walk, there are faint cracks in your muscles and muscles. But Guiwujiu's sitting posture is still stiff, his spine is still elevated, like the quality of pine and cypress, covered in frost. In the journey, spiritual root qualifications are of utmost importance, reflected in every level and step. As for the breakthrough from the 9 layers of true chi to the spiritual realm of Guiwujiu now, the spiritual energy accumulated around the body gradually emanates, surging and surging, then gradually condensed and transformed into elemental light. In the process of condensing, this wild aura roams through the body, washing away muscles and bones, and the immense pain suffered is a major obstacle. A cultivator with top-notch qualifications can travel for 36 weeks in one breath, and the entire breakthrough process only requires half a pillar of incense. With the great perseverance of the cultivator and the physical foundation of going through the 4 levels of quenching the mortal world, it is not difficult to overcome. But if it is the lowest level of spiritual root aptitude, the 30.6 breath of chi can last for a week, and breaking through the entrance can last for several days and nights. The pain in it is not something that the mortal body can bear. At present, the surge of true chi in Guiwujiu's body further compresses and solidifies, but it seems like a black little turtle slowly crawling inside. Guiwujiu had already widened his eyes, gritted his teeth, and his whole body trembled slightly. He used to have a handsome face, but now he is as ferocious as Arhat, and his patience has obviously reached the limit. If it were an ordinary person, I'm afraid they would have already passed out by now. However, Guiwujiu only had one thought in his heart. Crossing this step will bring about a turning point in fate. The disciples of Chongsha Pavilion are supposed to be geniuses with unparalleled qualifications, and the lowest level is also a 4th-grade spiritual root. Based on the current breakthrough speed of Guiwujiu, the process of condensed and washed breath lasts for several hours. By calculation, it seems that the quality of spiritual roots is only 7th or 8th grade. Another hour passed, and the various auras in the cave had dissipated without a trace. Guiwujiu's true chi further condensed and transformed into a black ball the size of a dragon eye swimming up and down in his body. In the eyes of others, Guiwujiu is no different from ordinary meditation. In fact, at this point, the most difficult moment has passed, and the condensed black aura looks extremely stable. Where is there any hint of frenzy and rampage? This aura quietly revolves around the meridians of Guiwujiu, not only not continuing to damage his physical body, but also constantly overflowing spiritual energy to repair his damaged meridian muscles. As long as you use your heart to guide chi back to the original state, you can achieve great success and become a spiritual cultivator. But at this moment, Guiwujiu's face turned pale, his eyes seemed to be closed, and two slightly imperceptible gazes stared blankly ahead, as if he had been severely injured in these hours of suffering, exhausted from energy, and his lamp had run out of fuel. At the moment when he was about to fail, the unnamed ink beads on the roof that were out of place suddenly leaped down and landed on Guiwujiu's head, trembling slightly and emitting a brilliant light. With just a ding sound, Guiwujiu suddenly woke up from his confusion, feeling that not only had all the scars on his body eased, but his mental trauma was also washed away like spring water, without any trace. Not only that, but the state of mind also enters a mysterious realm where everything is empty and all dust is untainted, as if examining the muscles, bones, blood, and flesh of this body in a bystander's posture, and the rotation of qi and meridians. Every tiny detail in this body, rich or barren in blood, with a perfect or damaged texture, is like the reflection of the moon on a flat lake, with every detail visible. At this moment, Guiwujiu had no intention of overthinking and slowly guided the last small cluster of condensed true qi in his body to travel through the 100 meridians with his heart. This group of true qi slowly travels along the 20.8 main meridians, repairing the injuries to the meridians and flesh one by one. The bones are dense, and the skin is radiant. This true qi gradually became thinner and smaller, and finally became like a tadpole the size of a soybean. But the energy and vitality hidden in the body seem to be getting stronger and stronger. Guiwujiu has full patience. As long as he can still sense this weak true qi, he will still use his skills to control it and make it travel throughout his body. Finally, after circulating for 3,600 revolutions, this true qi transformed into nothingness in the moment it sank into the elixir field. After the carefully maintained and thought-provoking breath dissipated, Guiwujiu suddenly felt that his body was empty, with nothing left, no qi, no blood, no bones, no muscles, and no spiritual intention. Transparent inside and outside, without any trace. Guiwujiu's eyes are clear and penetrating, without any panic. The heart has no place to stay, and there is peace and tranquility. Guiwujiu lingered in this mysterious realm of my breath, returning to emptiness for an unknown amount of time, like 3 or 4 days and nights, or 3 or 4 hours, or just 3 or 4 breaths. Guiwujiu suddenly felt that he had undergone some wonderful change. Although the whole body is still empty, as if it doesn't exist at all, it seems to have added a vibrant flavor, and it is no longer an absolute emptiness, like wandering. Dang! Being belongs to nothingness, creating something out of nothingness. Guiwujiu only felt a very loud golden bell ringing in his ear. The light in front of him was bright, muscles and bones were reborn, blood and flesh were condensed, and his spiritual consciousness was instantly restored to the extreme, as if a water cup was filled with water and could overflow at any time. The invisible aura that had already dissipated in the dantian suddenly solidified again, then rapidly expanded and instantly filled the whole body. It's like a small bubble being quickly blown up and tightly pressed against one's own skin. In the blink of an eye, my limbs and torso were all crystal clear and round, with a faint glow, as if covered in a membrane woven from the melting moonlight. The light of the spirit shines brightly, and the form and spirit shine brightly, which is called the spiritual form. End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Achievements and Old Testament Gold Symbols. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The source has no content or has errors. Chapter 5. Half as a fellow and half as a teacher. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5. Half as a fellow and half as a teacher. Between the vast sea and sky, the solitary peaks are steep and shrouded in clouds and mist. 108 large mountains form a circular array, forming the image of a dragon. Above the Gen position, there is a magnificent mountain range called Nanping Mountain. A waterfall flows down from the main peak of Nanping Mountain, Bian Peak, spraying snow and thunder, oscillating in the air like a jade dragon dancing wildly. Gather into a stream of water and head south along the peaks of Balian, Moyan, and Panlu, until reaching the 7th peak, Purple Mist Peak, where it converges into a deep and blue valley that stretches for thousands of meters. It is now the third quarter of the hour of Mao, and the rising sun is shining. The water surface is also shining with clear light from the starting point, and the ripples are uncertain. In the depths of the lake, there are faint birds perching, but they are obstructed by the vast mist and cannot be seen clearly. Only the intermittent and clear crane branches, along with the sound of their long beaks pecking at the water, indicate their existence. The lakeside is a semi-circular grand dojo, with dense and peaceful forests. At this moment, nearly 100 figures could be vaguely seen facing east, sitting cross-legged. If there are profound practitioners of Taoism, one can immediately see that the spiritual mechanisms between heaven and earth are undergoing extremely subtle changes. The people in front of them are truly indulging in qi, dining in the rosy clouds, exhaling old memories, and refining the essence of heaven and earth. The primitive classic states, "With one breath of dark energy, all things come into being." Since ancient times, the cultivation methods of various schools have been like the stars in the sky, unbeatable. But before reaching the perfect state of cultivating qi and staying in form, the golden elixir realm, consuming the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, is one of the most important aspects of cultivation. The only difference is that the essence of the method is different, and the level is different. The 9 Elements book, practiced by disciples of the Chongshao Pavilion of Yuehan Zone after passing the 4 passes of quenching fan, evolved from the fundamental classic, Tongling manifestation true form diagram, that directly points to the Tao, and can be regarded as the ultimate method of practicing true energy realm. Those who practice this practice are required to gradually refine the 1 yuan qi every 14 days, at the beginning of the sunrise. If you pass the level, it will be a spinning wheel, and after 14 days, according to the changes in birth and control, the second element of yin and yang will be refined and transformed. If there is a deviation in the understanding of Taoism, a disorder in the state of mind, or a lack of continuity in qi and energy, and the practice is not successful, it will take an additional 14 days of effort to start over. The number of heavenly stems is traversed one by one, lasting for 140 days, with 10 rotating wheels in succession, which can break through the realm of one layer of true qi. If each step has not been wrong and takes 3 years and 6 months, a practitioner who has passed the 4 levels of quenching the mortal world, and has just embarked on the path of immortality, can complete the 9 levels of true qi and prepare to challenge the spiritual realm. This kind of genius who enters spiritual form at the fastest speed is also known as a little free realm cultivator. The fewer cycles of failure, the more pure the Tao and the more thorough the understanding. After breaking through the spiritual realm, the foundation becomes better. The disciples of Chongshao Pavilion have extraordinary spiritual roots and extraordinary understanding, so it is not difficult to comprehend the Taoist teachings of the 9 Elements book. Furthermore, even if there are areas where the understanding of Taoism cannot be fully rounded, as long as one is brave and diligent, they may still be able to barely pass the level. Therefore, most disciples only occasionally encounter setbacks within a limited number of wheels. From ancient times to the present, 60.7 out of 10 disciples of Chongshao Pavilion have been able to control the number of failed rounds of cultivation within 12, and complete the cultivation of the 9th level of true qi in less than 4 years. Even if there are occasional setbacks, the number of failed rounds will not exceed 1/3, and it will take 5 years to complete the task. As for the extraordinary figure who is invincible and completes his cultivation with a small free environment, it is not uncommon. Half an hour later, the sky was far away, reflecting left and right. With the distant sound of a bell ringing through the valley, all the disciples woke up from their meditation, indicating the end of today's practice time. The figures on the dojo stood up one by one, moving from stillness to disorder, but they all wandered around the dojo without leaving. As usual, when the time for practicing martial arts arrives, the disciples will each take their own time. Either rush back to the cave to practice, study the Taoist scriptures, exchange experiences, or stroll through the mountains and rivers to cultivate the Taoist heart. Get together in groups of 3 or 2 with better relationships to connect and connect. However, for some unknown reason today, everyone only walked around nearby without leaving the range of the dojo. After a moment, the characters in the dojo gradually separated and divided into two groups. About 20 people gathered into a scattered group, seemingly not yet in their 20s, with men and women scattered. Some greeted and chatted with each other, some remained silent and independent, and some leisurely strolled. Although this group of people may seem to interact and communicate frequently on the surface, they give people a strange feeling, as if each person is like a mountain peak in a painting, forming a towering individual, maintaining a vast distance from others outside of themselves. The other group of people is slightly larger, about 30 or so, with a noticeably more immature appearance, around 16 or 17 years old. I saw more than 10 of them forming a semicircle and arching one person inside. More than 10 people stood around in twos and threes, staring at this small circle. It may seem like the posture of listening to storytelling in a tea house, but the middle-aged storyteller is also too young. He is a handsome and dignified young man. I only heard one voice say, "Please consult Senior Brother Guiwujiu." When I practice martial arts, no matter which will I turn, the first 3 days my Tao heart is clear, and I forget both things. After 3 days of indifference and silence, I cannot achieve perfection. After 3 days of external and internal disturbances, I am uncertain. In the last 2 days, my heart wanders through thousands of obstacles, and it is difficult to return to stillness. Although I have repeatedly taken chances to break through the level, it is ultimately a sign of deviation in my Tao method. If this continues, I cannot determine which level I will fall. I hope Senior Brother can teach me. The speaker was a plain-robed young man with clear eyebrows and a straight nose. He had an extremely beautiful face, and if walking in the neighborhood, I don't know how many girls in the waiting room would fall in love with him. But as soon as he spoke, his voice appeared soft and tender, with a somewhat childish expression. At this moment, he was standing in the inner circle, and the young man he called, Guiwujiu Senior Brother, was clearly the one surrounded by everyone. Upon hearing this, Senior Brother Guiwujiu smiled and said, "It's not a big deal. Junior Brother Mo is well aware of the principle of hiding emptiness and guarding emptiness when practicing martial arts, but he used too much force and violated the taboo of, too much is better than too much. It's important to note that true meaning flows endlessly, and knowing without guarding is kung fu. The impossible method is called the true method, while the non-emptiness is called the vacuum. If the intention is too great, guarding emptiness will turn into being clumsy. Understanding this important principle, one must be able to go through it without hindrance." The Mo Junior Brother showed a grateful expression on his face, bowed and stopped speaking, obviously digesting slowly. Another tall and fair-faced young man asked, "May I ask Senior Brother Guiwujiu, for the 14 days since today, I have been practicing the Gung Golden Will technique in the 7th level of the True Qi realm. In the past, during the 4th, 5th, and 6th levels, I have always strengthened my heart and gathered unparalleled spirit to break through this level. I asked myself that my mental skills are not bad, but I don't know why it has become increasingly difficult to pass each level. If I don't find the crux, I'm afraid I may not be able to pass this level smoothly." Before Senior Brother Guiwujiu could speak this time, a lazy voice said, "What may not necessarily pass the level smoothly, it is clear that you cannot pass it. In February of this year, your 6th round of the Gung Golden will turn to the night of the 14th day before narrowly succeeding. Who doesn't know? If each level of the realm is becoming increasingly difficult, do you have a 10% chance of success this time?" After speaking, a light laugh echoed among the audience. The person who spoke was a round-faced young man with a relaxed demeanor, gently playing with the jade pendant in his hand. The white-faced boy who asked the question didn't seem angry when he mocked him, but only smiled in response. Obviously, they have a very good relationship, not really speaking harshly, but just making sarcastic remarks among friends. From beginning to end, this white-faced boy stared intently at Senior Brother Guiwujiu, who was gathered in the center. Senior Brother Guiwujiu lowered his head and pondered for a moment before saying, "Gung Jin brings evil energy, and being strong is the most important. Junior brother Ning welcomed it with a sharp energy, which is theoretically good. However, the law does not seek external things, and the way does not distance people, he takes things far away and takes bodies close. The so-called sharp energy is to meditate and appreciate a bit of strength in one's own spiritual intelligence and nature, enriching and strengthening oneself. If one only strives bravely, it may have its name but contradict reality. This young man with a white face is obviously junior brother Ning. After hearing this, he seemed a bit stunned, as if the answer was quite unexpected. After Mo and Ning, someone kept asking the Guiwujiu senior brother, who was surrounded in the center. The questions asked are all about various difficulties in the cultivation process. Senior brother Guiwujiu refused to accept anyone and made up his mind one by one, with few obstacles. If everyone else present verbally refers to him as senior brother, this scene inevitably makes people mistake it for a gathering of teachers and students, preaching and imparting knowledge. Suddenly, a crisp and pleasant voice said, "Senior brother Guiwujiu, my waist and legs are sore and weak, I feel dizzy, and the golden star is shining everywhere. Where did you think I made a mistake in practicing the 9 yuan book? My waist and legs are sore and weak, and I feel dizzy." Guiwujiu pondered for a moment, then regained his senses and raised his head with a smile, saying, "Senior sister Xia, breaking through the realm and passing the level will never be disadvantageous. Naturally, I will not make mistakes in practicing the 9 yuan book." Senior sister may not have understood it, but it is probably the chapter in the food and beverage book that says, if you have enough clothing and food, you will be grateful. I believe it was because I was bored and had no one to play with me that I came to my senior brother's place to make trouble without reason. After saying this, laughter kept coming from all around. The questioner was like a young girl with eyebrows like a crescent moon and a delicate and elegant appearance. Dressed in a black outfit, but unable to stop the eager and energetic energy all over her body, she rolled her eyes and said softly, "Senior brother is really mean. Junior sister, I just noticed that senior brother Guiwujiu seems a bit absent-minded today. So I'm just joking a little." Speaking of which, Guiwujiu is considered a remarkable figure by the disciples of Chongshao Pavilion. Once a disciple of Chongshao Pavilion enters the level, she will have passed the quenching fan for 4 years and the 9 realms of qi for at most 5 years. She will be able to advance to the spiritual form and prepare to compete for the position of a true disciple in the Jinyuan Quanxian conference. And this is not to be blamed. Before entering the Chongshao Pavilion, due to an unexpected opportunity, he broke through the 4 passes of quenching fan, and if he were on the starting line, he would be ahead of others by 4 years. But he wasted 12 years in the true qi realm, as if he had not yet broken through the realm. The group of fellow disciples who entered the cabinet at the same time as him, and the slowest cultivators have already left for 3 years. The 9 yuan book has been practiced for 12 years, breaking a major record of 360,000 years in the establishment of the Yueheng sect. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Litigation only in 10 months. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6. Litigation only in 10 months. In the eyes of the fellow disciples of Chongshao Pavilion, Guiwujiu has 3 wonders. The first wonder was that it broke the precedent of disciples of Chongshao Pavilion who had practiced for no more than 5 years in the 9 yuan book, and were trapped in this state for 12 years. If it is a secular sect or a person of scattered cultivation, let alone 12 years, it is 120 years, which is also ordinary. But for the Chongshao Pavilion, which is a gathering place of talented people, this seems somewhat absurd. The most common conjecture is that the spiritual root quality of Guiwujiu is actually quite low. This conjecture has some basis, because Guiwujiu only practices several times slower than others, rather than being stuck at a certain level for a long time without breaking through. If this speculation is true, it is a great wonder that a disciple with such poor qualifications should be selected by Chongshao Pavilion. The second wonder is that Guiwujiu's understanding of Taoism is extremely profound, almost to an incredible extent. In their leisure time, they exchanged Taoist teachings and spiritual understanding with each other. Gradually, they realized that Guiwujiu, who had a slow and seemingly inferior spiritual root, was truly remarkable in his various understandings of the Nine Elements book. He often helped his fellow disciples solve problems and guide them through the maze. At first, some people thought that Guiwujiu might indeed have some profound insights, but it's not surprising. A ruler has its own shortcomings, and an inch has its own strengths. Perhaps the areas where he has a keen insight happen to be the shortcomings of others. Because he is a good teacher, he has gained a considerable reputation through his repeated efforts. Some people speculate that this belongs to the inferior spirit root of Wujiu, but is the descendant of a highly respected elder of the Yuheng sect, who was able to enter the Chongshao pavilion. To avoid being looked down upon by others, I learned many insightful insights from my elders in advance, giving myself an aura of erudition and wisdom, revealing myself to others without being ridiculed by my peers. However, anyone who has a clear understanding of the importance of hedging against xiaoge will scoff at this statement. Until the Zhenchuan Quan Xian Hui, 3 years ago, senior brother Wen Jinyuan, who won the first place and was promoted to a Zhenchuan disciple, candidly admitted at the farewell banquet with the fellow disciples of the Chongshao pavilion. Without the help of Guiwujiu, he would never be able to complete his practice of the 9 Yuan book step by step with the funds of a small free environment. The words of Wen Jinyuan caused a stir both above and below the Chongshao pavilion. Later on, even the real person in charge of the Chongshao pavilion gradually acquiesced to the disciples in the pavilion, seeking advice on the difficult aspects of cultivation and blaming Guiwu. Gradually, the Guiwujiu method was widely recognized and almost became the acting teacher of Chongshao pavilion. As for this last wonder, it is insignificant compared to the first 2 wonders. It refers to the amount of external resources and the immense wealth that a person possesses. Although the disciples of Chongshao pavilion have a prominent status and abundant supply, they have not been able to receive the same level of cultivation in the sect as the true disciples, regardless of cost. But Guiwujiu, despite having no family background, many people saw him recklessly taking precious elixirs such as the 4 symbols harmony chi pill and the Biwu pure yuan pill, which was eye-catching. After wandering in the dojo for half an hour, a green and misty aura, carrying 2 white clouds, flashed through the waterfall of Bian Peak and landed in the mid-air of Ziwu Peak dojo. Dun Guang revealed a crane figure, with a square-faced Taoist sitting on the back of the crane. This person wore a pure sun crown, an ame crown, and a broad belt with fluttering sleeves. He held a brush in his hand and tied a large red gourd around his waist. The attendant boy behind him held 2 cloud luo mixed golden umbrellas high. It turned out that Zhou Mingjin, the real person in charge of the Chongshao pavilion, had arrived. This week, the real person did not jump out of the hiding light, but shook the dust in his hand and suddenly gave birth to an octagonal tower with a radius of 100 zhang. 24 Xiangong jade pillars form a circle, with exquisite flying eaves at each corner. Even more visible are the faint clouds, adorned with fragrant grass and orchids, which are very unique and magnificent. At this moment, the radiance flickered, and 4 purple rainbows extended from the golden platform like floating ladders, falling straight in the center of the dojo. Without hesitation, the disciples stepped onto the rainbow staircase one by one. This is not about the fact that this week, the real person showcased their Yuanying true human aura everywhere. But rather, the martial arts he practiced were peculiar, except for the 2 hours of Zi and Wu in a day, his head did not touch the stars, and his feet did not walk in the dust. Therefore, every time you travel, you have to carry the Yunluo mixed gold umbrella and the falling dust gold platform with you. However, in a moment, Zhou Jinren sat down on the main seat of the courtyard on the golden platform, and the disciples below stood in 2 rows. Upon closer inspection of the distribution of the 2 groups of figures on the left and right, Guiwujiu is located at the top of the left column, and behind him are mostly the group of people who were surrounding the dojo just now asking questions. Senior Sister Xie stood still in the 3rd position, but her face was serious at this moment, without any trace of her ancient spirit and supernatural appearance. On the right side, there is a column of more than 20 people, which is naturally the group that was cold and distant just now. Seeing that everyone had arrived, a Taoist boy behind Zhou Jinren lifted a jade bell and lightly tapped it, emitting a clear and distant sound. The disciples bowed their hands and stood solemnly, without any disrespect. Although they are all talented individuals, it is not necessarily true that they will be able to cultivate to the level of yuanying in the future. Zhou Jinren swept the dust horizontally and opened the door to the mountain, saying, 10 days from now, there will be the selection meeting of the true transmission. I believe you are already well informed. It has been 3 years since the last Jinchuan selection conference. Each session of the Legislative Assembly is only scheduled for autumn and the specific date is not specified, but everyone knows that it will only be held during the rest of the month. This is the top priority of the Chongshao Pavilion, and even the existence of the Chongshao Pavilion is for the sake of the 3-year struggle, isn't it? Upon hearing Zhou Jinren's words, the people on the right column remained silent, indicating that regardless of whether they had received the news in advance, the current situation was not sudden. Several people's eyes flickered with excitement, wondering what they were thinking. But the group of people under Guiwujiu seemed to be full of interest. Zhou Jinren glanced inside the arena and saw that there were 4 more people in the right row than last time. He said in a loud voice, Ning Suchen, Zhang Xianlong, Feng Tianqing, and Song Pingquan, all 4 of you have also been promoted to the spiritual realm. I heard Zhou Jinren calling them by their respective names, and all 4 of them were listed as gifts. Among them, Ning Suchen is a woman with long hair draped over her shoulders and phoenix eyebrows trimmed. Among these 4, she is particularly graceful and exudes a graceful and flowing demeanor. Zhou Jinren untied the big red gourd from his waist, pulled out the cork, and suddenly the aroma of wine overflowed. After taking a big sip, Zhou Jinren said quietly, I believe no one has passed the return photo test. Let's make a decision then. After being promoted to spiritual form, disciples of Chongshao Pavilion do not practice the next stage of cultivation before participating in the True Transmission Conference. But for a period of time to regulate one's performance and solidify the foundation. This level is called returning photos. This process can take several days or months, depending on the qualifications of each individual. Therefore, the disciple of Chongshao Pavilion, Jin Jialingxing, can choose not to participate in the first Jinchuan Quanxian conference and wait for 3 years. Of course, there is only one chance. On the upper right side, facing Guiwujiu, stands a young man with a golden crown, a majestic figure, and a grand demeanor. He listened to Zhou Jinren's question and without a doubt, the first person to step forward and say, I am determined to compete for the position of the true transmission. Cheng Buming achieved the spiritual realm 2 years ago, with his strength vaguely ranking first among the others. If nothing unexpected happens, he should have taken up one of the 3 spots for a true disciple. Although most disciples are not willing to reveal their own details, they can still find clues from many subtle aspects to distinguish roughly between high and low. Firstly, the success or failure of cultivation in the 9 Elements book is a scale that no one can hide. Whoever takes longer and who takes shorter time, all disciples secretly pay attention to calculation. Secondly, there are usually some competitions among peers in terms of strength, reasoning, and performance skills. Although these are usually aimed at a relatively small stage in practice, one can also see the ups and downs within a glimpse. Cheng Buming is the only spiritual cultivator among the current generation of Chongshao Pavilion's spiritual disciples who has completed the 9 Elements book with a small and comfortable environment, without any mistakes. He is not inferior to anyone in terms of his usual teachings and methods. Before Cheng Buming could finish speaking, his 2 disciples, the second and third, simultaneously snatched out. Disciple Qiao Xiuguang, Rong Changji, is determined to compete for the position of true transmission. Except for Cheng Buming, no one is confident enough to claim the position of a true disciple. But Qiao Xiuguang and Rong Changji are also likely to be considered higher in everyone's minds. Qiao Xiuguang is, as his name suggests, with a slender figure. But every move and gesture exudes a somewhat rugged aura. Rong Changji had a blue face and thin lips, a gloomy complexion, and a sense of pride between movement and stillness that kept strangers away. Qiao Xiuguang spent an additional 14 days on the True Qi 6-fold Bing Fire Wheel and the True Qi 8-fold Wu Earth Wheel, respectively. However, Rong Changji encountered a small setback in the True Qi Wuchongyimu Wheel and the True Qi Qichong Kue Wheel, both of which achieved a completion speed of 3 years, 6 months, and 28 days, ranking second among the disciples. Zhou Zhenren nodded slightly, and the three people's unwavering statements were also within his expectations. For a moment, the vast majority of disciples did not hesitate much and stood out one after another. Disciple Shen Xianyong, Disciple Zhen Xiaohua, Disciple Yi Shuaying, Disciple Zhong Zichang, determined to compete for the position of true transmission. For a moment, even Zhang Xianlong, Feng Tianqing, and Song Pingquan, who have achieved spiritual form in the past half a year, are determined to participate in this year's Xinchuan Quan selection meeting. As a disciple of the Chongshao Pavilion of the Yueheng sect, not only is my aptitude, but also my character is not bad. Everyone knows that although there is a chance to abstain, the opponents encountered during the cultivation process are either one or the other, and no one can avoid all the opponents. Only by firmly believing and facing challenges head-on can we win the opportunity to succeed on the front line. Inheriting the superior external traditions of a family, there is also a great chance of achieving the golden elixir or even the Yuanying, but it is bound to miss the possibility of pursuing the Tao. Although there were little free realm cultivators like Qing Buming blocking the way in this year, it is not uncommon in history to have 2 or 3 little free realm cultivators in the same year. Just like in the arena, Guiwujiu and Chu Boi, Xiaoyueping, both of them, have reached the 8th level of true Qi cultivation and seem to have not yet made any mistakes. If nothing unexpected happens, they will be the next 2 little free realm cultivators. Even if one's strength is not high and the chance to compete for the true pass is slim, it is nothing more than trying one's best and living up to one's true intentions. They are inexplicably timid and may even be looked down upon. Zhou Zhenren was delighted to see his disciples facing the dispute over the path without hesitation. Looking up, there are still 2 people who have not made a decision yet. Zhou Zhenren didn't urge either, he just set up the double curtains and waited quietly. About half an hour later, a young woman with a blue and white skirt tied around her waist, beautiful eyes, cherry lips, long hair, and shoulders stepped out with slender feet and whispered, "Disciple Ning Suchen, willing to compete for the position of a true disciple." End of this chapter. Chapter 7. A New Neighbor with Blossoming Flowers. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7. A new neighbor with blossoming flowers. Ning Suchen is actually not yet in her 20s, but she has a dignified and graceful appearance, with a calm and composed demeanor in her actions. In addition, she was wearing a white dress with 2 green lotus embroidered on her waist, lacking the youthful charm of a young girl, giving off a first impression that was like 20.5. Rong Changji, who ranked 3rd in this column, couldn't help but feel a slight sigh when he saw this scene. Ning Suchen usually doesn't show off her beauty. But no one knows that she is still fully equipped until the cultivation of the 8 realms of true Qi is completed. Half a year ago, everyone thought she would be the 2nd little free realm spiritual cultivator after Qing Buming. Unexpectedly, the time when she finally completed the 9th level of true Qi was 40.2 days later than the expected day by everyone. That means she made 3 mistakes in a row during her cultivation in the 9th realm. In the eyes of most of our fellow disciples, besides Cheng, Xiao, and Rong, there are still Ning Suchen, Zhong Zichang, and Ran Dongling who are outstanding in this year, which is a 6 in 3 situation. But in the minds of Qiao Xiuguang and Rong Changji, Ning Suchen is the only variable. Although Zhong Zichang and Ran Dongling are also quite outstanding, they are not yet in the eyes of Qiao and Rong. At this moment, seeing Ning Suchen's hesitant and indecisive demeanor, Rong Changji couldn't help but underestimate this woman a bit. The dispute over the path of the road, with both ends of the mouse and head, is not the true nature of a real person. After Ning Suchen spoke up, although Zhou Zhangge still looked calm, everyone on the stage turned their eyes to the person who had not yet expressed their opinion. This person is ranked 15th or 16th in the right class, with a round face and a yellow robe, and a kind face. He seemed unable to resist the pressure and had to step out and say, "In my daily practice of polishing my skills, I realize that my Dao, Qi, and Qi can still be further refined and refined. I believe that I have not fully overcome the challenge of returning to the post. I have decided to give up my qualification, practice for 3 years, and participate in the next True Transmission Conference." As he spoke, his voice grew louder and louder. Finally, I secretly glanced at the previous Zhou leader's pavilion and smiled awkwardly. Without inscribing oneself, everyone is full of slander. It has been over 9 months since Han Taikong achieved his spiritual form. It is unreasonable to say that he has not fully overcome the challenge of returning to his hometown. However, the person spent 4 years, 8 or 9 months studying the 9 Elements book, making them relatively more qualified in the Chongshao Pavilion. It is reasonable for me to be hesitant to participate in the True Story Conference for a moment. But I dare not participate this time, and after 3 years, I will eventually be unable to avoid it. Such disciples, after participating in the True Transmission Dharma Assembly, choose a better alternative from other provinces, which is their ultimate destination. After everyone had made a decision, Zhou Zhangge did not judge and said, "Throughout the history of the selection ceremony, disciples of our true Qi realm can also watch with us. You can go to the Failing Hall to receive an observation token with your respective Chongshao Pavilion artifact nameplates. In 3 years, most of you will also personally come to the competition. Observing once, I believe you will have some feelings." Upon hearing this, many of the young disciples led by Guiwujiu showed excitement on their faces. But there are also disciples who have been in the true Qi realm for more than 3 years, and it is obvious that they knew it had become a tradition, so they are not surprised. After the explanation of the selection of the true transmission was completed, just as the disciples thought the gathering would end today, Zhou Zhenren said, "Don't be busy, there's one small matter to explain and then it will end." He reached out his hand, grabbed the sleeve of a Taoist boy behind him, and gently pulled him in front of him. The disciples were greatly surprised and looked up. It turned out that this Taoist child had bright eyes, a graceful nose, and cherry lips. She was actually a beautiful and charming little girl around 10 years old. She was originally wearing a half-robe and standing behind Zhou Zhenren, but most people didn't pay attention. Only a few sharp-eyed and observant disciples realized it was strange that Zhou Zhenren had an extra attendant Dao Tong by his side today, and he looked quite uneasy. Zhou Zhenren smiled and said, "Her name is Mu Yinli, and she has been your junior sister since today. As senior brothers and sisters, you should love each other more." However, upon hearing Zhou Zhenren's words, everyone's doubts not only remained unresolved, but also felt even more strange. The new disciples who have entered the Chongshao Pavilion have always used their 4 years of achievements to pass the 4 passes of quenching the fan. After 4 years of acquaintance, when we were able to practice the 9 Yuan book together, we naturally developed some friendship with senior brothers and sisters in the pavilion. The principle of recommending one by one from the Lord of the Chongshao Pavilion. Sure enough, Zhou Zhenren said again, "She has some chance. She has already passed the 4 levels of Cuifan. Half a month later, she will be practicing the 9 Yuan book with you." The disciples were moved in their hearts, and a few of them even glanced at the remaining light in their eyes towards Guiwujiu. The choices made by Chongshao Pavilion are all true and pure cultivation seeds that have not yet embarked on the path of enlightenment. This is the first step from scratch. If you are not pure and solid enough, and come into contact with miscellaneous martial arts, it is enough to shake your foundation. At least for the past few decades, those who have passed the 4 levels of Cuifan before entering the field have only heard of Guiwujiu. Zhou Zhenren had a kind face and pointed to the row of people on the right. He grabbed the small braid behind Mu Yinli's head and gently tugged, saying, although these people are your senior brothers and sisters, they don't need to have any friendship. The main road faces the sky, each side walks. After 10 days, you probably won't see them again. Pointing to the column of Blameless again, he said, this group of people should be kind and kind. We should practice martial arts and cultivation together for the next 3 years. If we offend them, you little ones with small arms and legs will not be able to beat them. When you are bullied and crying, don't come to find the old Taoist. The old Taoist only cares about your cultivation and doesn't care about your fights. Zhou Zhenren is both dignified and humorous, sometimes with a teacher-like demeanor, and sometimes with witty and unrestrained language. His words may seem like a joke, but among the disciples, there are those who have a keen mind and play with Zhou Zhenren, actually implying that the disciples should take care of this little girl more. I couldn't help but marvel in my heart. I carefully examined this little girl and secretly thought that if we get to know each other well, we must inquire about her background. Suddenly seeing these many strangers, Mu Yinli began to feel somewhat restrained. Just now, Zhou Zhanga and the disciples below explained the matter of the True Transmission Society, but she played with the colorful pearls embedded in her Taoist robe on her own. At this moment, she opened her big eyes and looked up and down. Mu Yinli followed Zhou Minjin's fingers and carefully examined the row of figures on the right, only feeling that their respective magnanimities were extraordinary. Although they have different appearances and clothing, their rock-solid connotations are very similar. But among the vast majority of people, there was an air of raw and cold opposition, which made her feel a bit uncomfortable. Turning his head askew, he scanned the left column of people again. They were clearly younger, with a calm and confident expression similar to that of the group on the right. However, there was an added charm that could not be concealed, a lively and energetic atmosphere, similar to when he was playing in the village. Dealing with this group of people seems to be easier indeed. Mu Yinli thought. Zhou Zhenren thought for a moment and pointed to the lower head on the left, saying, this person is called Guiwujiu. If you encounter any difficulties in your practice in the future, just find him. 5 or 6 years ago, there were rumors in the Chongshao pavilion that there was a disciple who practiced slowly but saw deep knowledge, but Zhou Minjin didn't care. Until 3 years ago, when the scripture Jin Yuan solemnly promoted the fame of Guiwujiu, Zhou Zhenren became curious and summoned him, implying the intention of questioning and comparing. However, at this sight, Zhou Zhen was greatly shocked. This Guiwujiu's thorough understanding of the Taoist teachings in the 9 Yuan book is almost to the point of being microscopic and skillful, even comparable to that of a cultivator in the Yuaning realm. Zhou Zhenren himself, after experiencing the spiritual form, golden pill, and elemental baby realm of cultivation, often scrutinized his own path, corrected chaos, abandoned falsehood, and returned to reality. Standing at today's height, he suddenly looked back and had a truly pure understanding of the cultivation method of the true Qi realm, the 9 Yuan book. This is the true state of Qi, and it is unimaginable to achieve this step in practice. After reaching the golden elixir and Yuanying realms, the Taoist techniques became increasingly difficult and mysterious. The first level of enlightenment is originally meant to hinder people's path by the will of heaven. But in the most basic realm of true Qi, the Tao method is understood by words and meanings, and everyone can understand it. Practice Qi step by step, no one cannot step on the spiritual form. It seems that even a slight discomfort is not a big deal. However, the 9 Elements book has its own mysteries, in which the understanding of Taoism is not in the most complex or difficult, but in the most true and pure. Many times you think you have fully understood, but in reality, you are still separated by a thin layer of yarn. A subtle difference is the mystery within the plate, as if it were right or wrong. Not only does it lead to a difference in speed when practicing, but once entering the spiritual form, the depth of the foundation and the thickness of the foundation will also show a difference. Zhou Zhenren even spoke up to test whether Guiwujiu was that kind of person. I didn't get the answer I wanted in my heart, but Zhou Zhenren paid more attention to Guiwujiu. From then on, Zhou Zhenren left the task of resolving doubts and difficulties among disciples in the true Qi realm to Guiwujiu. Mu Yinli opened her eyes wide and saw a handsome and upright young man wearing a cloud-patterned Taoist robe at the forefront on the left. He had clear eyebrows and clear eyes, with a sincere and transparent expression in his eyes. At this moment, he looked thoughtful. Suddenly, as if sensing his gaze, he turned his head and smiled slightly in front of his curious gaze. Zhou Zhenren pondered for a moment and was considering how to use his words. He subtly suggested that Guiwujiu should help Mu Yinli cultivate with a little more care. A few days ago, the incarnation of the leader Nangong Zhenjuan brought this little girl to his place and instructed to properly place her in the Chongshao Pavilion. Although Chongshao Pavilion is important in the Yueheng sect, the selection of disciples is handled by dedicated elders, and it should not be personally intervened by the sect leader Zhenjuan. The leader of Yueheng sect has already reached that level of cultivation, and it is common for him to have no movements for hundreds of years. If there is any movement, it will inevitably vibrate up and down. Although the leader is just an incarnation and there is no unnecessary explanation, the instruction of proper placement has already explained everything. Zhou Zhenren dare not neglect. Zhou Zhenren's words were well prepared, and he looked up at Guiwujiu and said, "Guiwujiu, you." Zhou Zhenren's eyes suddenly shone with a brilliant light, and he withdrew his prepared words in an uncertain way. "Guiwujiu, are you already in the spiritual realm?" P.S. Wooden glass appears in the wedge. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Farewell to a fun tour. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8 Farewell to a fun tour. A burst of exclamation echoed from beneath the originally silent Jade steps. Among the more than 20 people in the spiritual realm on the right, several suddenly turned their heads and stared at Guiwujiu. Only 5 or 6 people, including Qing Buming, Xiao Xiuguang, and Rong Changji, showed a hint of surprise before quickly regaining their composure. When the spiritual form is first formed, there is inevitably a phenomenon of spiritual light covering the body, just like a piece of clothing woven by light wrapped around the skin, which takes more than a month to gradually dissipate and return to the body. Most of the people present couldn't help but doubt that it was due to the practice of cultivating qi every 14 days without any absence. When did he achieve his spiritual form? How could there be no signs of manifestation? Also, the tone of the real person this week was surprisingly uncertain. Guiwujiu took a step forward and looked at him as if he had not seen anything before. He bowed to Zhou Zhenren and said calmly, "I inform you, Zhenren. I have successfully passed the level yesterday and advanced to the spiritual form." Upon hearing Guiwujiu personally confirm, the disciples had a colorful expression, as if each had their own thoughts. The group of disciples from the true Qi realm behind Guiwujiu had some joyful expressions, some relieved expressions, and some whispering, but most of them were in a bystander posture, with a relaxed expression between their eyebrows. And the disciples in the spiritual realm on the right mostly furrowed their brows, as if thinking about something. However, one thing is certain. The record for the slowest speed of Chongshao Pavilion in breaking through the true Qi realm finally ended in 2012, which can be considered as an end to a considerable suspense. Although Zhou Zhenren's face was plain, his inner surprise was no less than that of these disciples. Spiritual realm cultivators, even after a month of spiritual light covering the body illusion period, it is extremely easy to understand the details. Even if the shell of the elemental light is hidden on the surface of his body, it is still as clear as a star to him as a Yuaning cultivator. But the elemental light inside Guiwujiu's body was as thin as a transparent cicada robe, and he almost ignored it just now. It's just that I can't even determine for a moment whether it's due to my poor qualifications and weakness in Yuanguang, or whether it's extremely pure and almost transparent. Zhou Zhenren pondered for a moment and said, "You have already broken through your spiritual form, but you have not yet entered the right class. You still consider yourself a disciple of the true Qi realm and have no intention of participating in this year's True Transmission Selection Conference. Guiwujiu said, "If I rashly attend the meeting before breaking through the level of returning to the light, I believe my hope is slim. I am willing to make a slight attempt during these 10 days, and if I am lucky enough to succeed, I will consider whether to compete for the position of true transmission, the long road, vying for life with the heavens. Not to mention 3 years, even 1 year of time is extremely precious." Zhou Zhenren was not surprised to receive this answer from Guiwujiu. For example, the top scorer of the previous session, Wen Jinyuan, achieved spiritual form 7 days before the start of the Dharma assembly. He worked hard for several days to break through the return to the light level, and finally took the stage to win the championship, spreading a good story in the door. Zhou Zhenren let out a sigh and said, "Since 12 years of hard work have been wasted, why bother 3 more years? Success or failure is not a concern for the time being. If you fail to fully demonstrate your abilities at the conference, it will be a great regret in your life's journey. Besides, if you participate in this session of the True Transmission Conference, the old Taoist will inevitably have to travel every 14 days in the future, which will be very troublesome." Although Zhou Zhenren's last sentence contained a hint of mockery, Guiwujiu recognized his sincere advice and solemnly bowed. The path was originally chosen by oneself and had no involvement with the teacher. Zhou Zhenren was able to say such a thing, which can be considered as benevolent and righteous. This is also because Guiwujiu did provide some assistance to Zhou Zhenren. In theory, for lower-level cultivators who teach to refine the mortal and the realm of true qi, having a golden core cultivator present in person is enough to ensure that everything is safe and sound. However, as the gathering place for the true seeds of the Yueheng sect, the Chongshao Pavilion is a symbol of solemnity. The position of the head of the Chongshao Pavilion is held every 9 years, with senior elders from the Yuanying realm of the Shangshuan Palace taking turns to serve as the head. Not only that, every 14 days on the day when disciples of Chongshao Pavilion practice their elemental cultivation, the real person in charge of the pavilion must personally be present to protect them, solve difficulties for the disciples, and guide their cultivation. It is important to note that the duration of each practice in seclusion by Yuanying Zhenren is not fixed. Traveling every 14 days means that the 9 years of serving as the head of the Chongshao Pavilion will completely delay one's own cultivation, which is a task that the elders of the Upper Xian Palace cannot avoid. Since discovering the extraordinary talent Guiwujiu, Zhou Zhenren has been absent every 14 days of collecting energy and practicing qi. Counting carefully, he has only appeared 6 or 7 times in the past 3 years, completely becoming a hands-off shopkeeper. In the eyes of Zhou Zhenren, Guiwujiu has excellent insights, but unfortunately, there are too many interruptions in the practice cycles of the 9 Yuan book. The abundance and completeness of qi and the condensed strength of Yuan Guang will both be insufficient. If you calm down and patiently polish your character, achieving unity of mind and body, you may not have the opportunity to challenge the position of a true disciple. But the immortal family already emphasizes the order of cause and effect, so he only talks until he stops. 2 things were resolved, and several matters were explained to Mu Yinli. Zhou Zhenren collected the magic weapon and left with a cloud. Not long after, most of the young disciples in the true qi realm also took out their personal magic tools and left one after another. A round-faced young man dressed in a Chinese robe with 7 levels of true qi cultivation walked over, stroking a smooth jade pendant in his hand, and said with a smile, "Senior brother Gui, you must work hard these 10 days to break through the level of returning to the photo." Guiwujiu smiled and said, "Why is junior brother Lan so focused on my brother's cultivation and progress?" The young man with a round face said seriously, "Because I can't see the details of senior brother Gui clearly. It's very troublesome to compete with people who can't see the details clearly. So I hope senior brother Gui can pass the return photo test as soon as possible, so that he can participate in this year's True Transmission Conference and not stay behind for 3 years." Many of Guiwujiu's junior brothers and sisters in the true qi realm have a half-teacher friendship, and most of them bid farewell to Guiwujiu one by one when they leave. Not long after, Xia Yueping took out a chessboard-shaped flying tool, stood on it, rushed back to Guiwujiu and made a funny face, then fled from afar. Another moment passed, and the shadows shifted towards noon. At this point, the lower generation children of the true Qi realm have already left cleanly. Only the little girl Miyinli, for some reason, did not leave. She slipped alone to the edge of the dojo and sat down by the lake, with her feet reaching into the water to row and play. Strangely, none of the spiritual realm disciples in the field left, seemingly achieving a subtle understanding. After a moment, more than 20 spiritual disciples gradually approached and stood in 2 rows. Qing Buming glanced around the crowd and said calmly, "No one left, it's evident that everyone has thought of being together." A burly young man with a square face exclaimed loudly, "Not bad." After the true transmission Dharma meeting, if there is no special opportunity, the fellow disciples present may not have a chance to see each other again. This is the last joy gathering. It's better to pick up the sun than to collide with it, and it will end today. His skin is delicate like that of a woman, but his voice is rough, resembling that of a middle-aged man in his 30s and 40s, causing everyone's eardrums to buzz. This person's name is Zhongzichang. Among the spiritual disciples on the field, besides Qing Buming, Xiao Xiuguang, Rong Changji, and Ming Suchen, he is also recognized as a person with high strength. Xiao Xiuguang's voice was gentle and calm, exuding a calm and comfortable charm. In the past 3 years, the Joy Tour has been held a total of 9 times. This Purple Mist Peak Dojo was originally our place of cultivation, and this last Joy Tour will return here, which is the meaning of unity. A graceful young master and a talented woman in the boudoir. After a banquet, there are often various wine competitions such as riddles, poems, and verses, which are both for entertainment and talent. The same goes for the spiritual disciples of Chongshao Pavilion. After a few months, there is a small gathering called Joy Gathering. Usually, each disciple takes turns to host, showcasing their skills while having a banquet. The content of the competition is based on a small spell, with various forms, but the purpose always shows the depth and cleverness of cultivation. Rong Changji said coldly, "Then useless empty words can be avoided. Today's final meeting is nothing more than a trial of the short and long before the selection of the true biography. If no one volunteers to be the person who sets the question, Rome will not give up. The true transmission Dharma conference in 10 days will be a major divide in the fate of those present." This last Joy Tour also had some unusual connotations, as it was meant to explore the depths and realities of others. But when Rong Changji spoke it out naked, it couldn't help but be a bit harsh. Several people immediately frowned and remained silent. Han Taikong clapped his hands and laughed heartily, saying, "What kind of way are we still? What kind of immortality are we cultivating? What is the difference between us and martial artists who are brave and fierce in the mortal world? It's just that our divine abilities are dozens of times stronger." Since this meeting is called Liu Hui, not Yan Fa Hui or Wu Do Hui, it can't be just a name for nothing. Besides, if we can't enjoy it to the fullest, who has the heart to show their skills for Rong to see? Rong Changji snorted coldly and did not argue with him. Han Taikong gave up this session of the True Transmission Dharma Association, appearing timid, but instead gained a bachelor's status. Not only myself, but anyone present may not have the intention to entangle with him. Another young man with a graceful demeanor said, "After years of companionship, there will eventually be a farewell. Even if there is a dispute on the Double Dragon Pool in 10 days, it will not affect the feeling of saying goodbye today." As senior brother Han said, "Let's enjoy ourselves first and then talk about the rest." 7 or 8 people echoed in agreement. As for whether they truly agree, it is unknown. Han Taikong looked around at everyone and smiled cunningly, saying, "What good things do you senior brothers and junior brothers have? Don't hide them. Han will not give up and contribute 10 jars of mist curtain silk. Everyone should consider it themselves." After speaking, with a flick of his hand, a faint light rippled from the jade belt around his waist, and 10 Tibetan liquor jars, over 1 foot high and bound with hemp cloth, appeared in front of everyone. An intoxicating fragrance rushed towards my face, almost condensed into the essence. Everyone present showed a surprised expression, as if startled by Han Taikong's bold hand. Mist curtain silk is well known in the Yuheng zone, and can be regarded as the first immortal wine in these 4 continents and 6 seas. Zhong Zichang was both surprised and jealous, saying, "Within our sect, even the Yuanying immortal, who is good at this cup, can only obtain 2 or 3 jars of mist curtain silk in a year. Senior brother Han is really skilled." Han Taikong remained smiling and didn't speak anymore. A young woman wearing a tassel bun and a lotus-colored floral skirt chuckled and said, "I have always taken on the whole set of errands, so I have no other good things to offer." Her right arm trembled, and the silver ring on her jade wrist shone. Suddenly, a jade long table measuring 3 or 4 zhang appeared in front of everyone. There were not many ebony pillars on both sides of the table, which happened to be 20.4. In front of each seat on the green table, there is a dragon-handled phoenix head teapot, a jade lotus leaf plate, and a celadone pressure cup arranged neatly. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Jade beads falling on a plate to show divine power, Part 1. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. Jade beads falling on a plate to show divine power, Part 1, Ming Suchen said, "I have some by Luo Qing Yigua here." She then took out more than 10 plates of pale green and yellowed exotic fruits from the storage tool. This fruit is slightly larger than longan, and the branches and leaves have not yet been completely removed. There is still fresh dew flowing slowly on the surface. I have some water moon glass milk here. Junior brother, I have a basket of Jingming Lianzhu lotus roots here. Little sister, there are nearly 100 white dragon grass returning pills here. Except for 6 or 7 ascetic cultivators who were devoid of desires, they couldn't bring out any good items. Everyone present took out a lot of treasures. In no time, the long table was already filled with various rare fruits, all of which were rare delicacies in the sky and difficult to see underground. The disciples of Chongshao Pavilion are mostly elite seeds of a family or clan. Since Han Taikong was the first to take the lead, if the later ones were too humble, their faces would not be able to hang. Han Taikong suddenly smiled and said, "Senior brother Gui is well known for his wealth. I don't know if there is anything rare that can make us shine. Although Guiwujiu only broke through yesterday, it is not the first time he has attended. 2 or 3 years ago, many people present had received his guidance. Even if this generation comes from behind and takes the lead in advancing their spiritual form, it is not easy for them to stand tall in front of him. Therefore, Guiwujiu naturally became the only participant in the true Qi realm." Guiwujiu smiled slightly. Although he practiced diligently, he was not an ascetic monk. Immediately, with a tremble in their hands, a small dish appeared in front of each person's seat. The side of the dish was square, but it looked like a piece of jade tofu. This product is fresh, tender, with clear water overflowing everywhere. At first glance, it belongs to the category of food. Guiwujiu smiled and said, "This thing is called Qibao crystal cream. Take this cream before drinking, and the mellow strength of the wine will increase 10 times, while also being able to hold 1,000 cups without getting drunk." The younger Marshall brothers and sisters were amazed, and they only heard of its name. It can be said to be the best assistant that all drunkards dream of. The previous entertainment party was just a formality, all of which were simple preparations. And the posture in front of me is no less impressive than the gathering of Yuanying immortals. As everyone was about to leave the banquet, Guiwujiu looked around at the people present and gestured, "Wait a minute. There is still a little guest there. Although we only met for 10 days, it's not good to ignore her. I wonder which junior brother Zhou Zhangge entrusted him to." The person in question was Mu Yinli sitting by the lake, playing alone in the water. Everyone shook their heads after looking at each other. Seeing no one claim it, everyone was somewhat surprised. Zhou Zhangge and the disciples of the true Qi realm each left, but Mu Yinli stayed in place. She has not yet practiced and cannot even control the lowest flying magic tools. Everyone present thought that Zhou Zhangge had entrusted her to a fellow disciple. Ning Suchen's beautiful eyes flickered, and she moved her lotus steps lightly. She whispered a few words to Mu Yinli and called her over. She asked softly, "Why didn't junior sister Mu leave with Lord Zhou? Is there someone else coming to pick you up?" Mu Yinli blinked her eyes and said, "My cave is at Hangdang Peak. I heard that senior brother Gui is a neighbor. Zhou Zhangge said that senior brother will take me back today." Guiwujiu was greatly surprised and didn't expect it to fall on him. Mu Yinli bounced and came to Guiwujiu's side, but this seat was full of carrots and holes, with no extra space left. A woman with a yao tai bun on her head and a bright yellow long skirt smiled and said, "Why don't you come over and sit on my sister, Sister Mu?" Mu Yinli tilted her head and rolled her eyes, but did not answer. Ning Suchen smiled and said, "Qin Shimi's words are not right. How can you use the same words you used to deceive a 4-year-old brother at home on Mu Shimi? Mu Shimi has entered the path of enlightenment, but we are serious classmates." After finishing speaking, she brushed her finger and took out a pedestal. This pier is small and exquisite, and at first glance it is suitable for children. It is covered with a layer of light white silk and embroidered with exquisite craftsmanship, depicting 2 tigers pouncing and playing, vividly portrayed. It is said to be a tiger, but in fact it is chubby, about the size of a palm, with a bright red tongue protruding from its mouth, similar to a kitten. Han Taikong glanced at the decoration on the small pedestal and couldn't help but say, "Sister Ning, shouldn't this pedestal be the one you used when you were young? I can't believe it's in this style." Ning Suchen's expression remained unchanged and she said calmly, "Senior brother Han guessed wrong. I picked up this item on the mountain path a few days ago." Han Taikong had a strange expression on his face. Mu Yinli seemed to like the pattern on this pier very much. She squatted down to look back, then reached out and touched the heads of the 2 little tigers, and reluctantly sat down. At this point, the Joy Tour officially began, with classmates toasting and chatting with each other. The atmosphere quickly became lively. Although Mu Yinli is young, she has a wise and transparent heart. This group of people revealed a sense of estrangement during the morning gathering, but now they were laughing and looking very affectionate. Mu Yinli felt a hint of disdain in her heart, and at the same time, she felt a bit dull and tasteless. However, after tasting a few rare fruits from the banquet and a glass of mist-curtained silk, her mind was completely attracted by the delicious wine and delicacies, and she indulged in eating and drinking without caring about what others said. A few senior sisters who wanted to tease her and talk were all responded with, and by her, and soon they ate with round bellies and rosy cheeks. Not all the people present were baseless hypocrisy. If not engraved, cold and indifferent from beginning to end, with few words, Qiao Xiu, Guang Rong, and Chang Ji not only communicated with each other, but also had a few conversations with a limited number of people. There are many people who talk to Guiwujiu, but it's just a simple and straightforward answer. However, 7 or 8 people led by Han Taikong were enthusiastic and talkative, creating a lively atmosphere on the stage. Eating and drinking like this, after half an hour. The heat is sufficient. Rong Changji suddenly slammed the phoenix head teapot in his hand and said in a deep voice, "It's time to get to the point." With this outburst, he suddenly interrupted the conversation of several disciples, and their faces were all uneasy. Han Taikong smiled and said, "Junior brother Rong is so impatient. But what should come always comes. Han is not talented, willing to throw a brick to attract Jade, even if it's half a problem." Although he had a smile on his face, as soon as he spoke these words, the atmosphere in the room suddenly changed, as if he had pulled people out of their joyful banquets and placed them in the battlefield where the golden drums were beating together. No matter how delicious this misty curtain silk is, it can't be drunk anymore. Everyone was calculating in their hearts that since Han Taikang had chosen to give up participating in the true biography competition, starting with him would be a good choice. Everyone agrees at present. When Han Taikang saw everyone agreeing, he chuckled and immediately waved his sleeve. The spiritual elemental light moved faintly, like a long whale absorbing water, causing a splash of water in the Yuming Lake, like a rolling emerald rushing towards him. This waterline approached Han Taikang's body 5 or 6 feet into the air and did not fall, as if attracted by inexplicable force, forming a ball like a crystal clear and flawless. In a moment, the crystal ball became increasingly flattened, transforming from a spherical shape into a cake shape, and then from a cake shape to a jade plate with a diameter of more than 2 feet. The surface of this jade plate is smooth, full of alcohol and flawless, and even more sparkling. It is no different from a real glazed jade plate. After the spiritual form of the Jinjie cultivator in the true Qi realm, his whole body of true Qi is transformed into the power of Yuan Guang. Compared to the other, both strength and precision of control are no different. Han Taikang smiled and said, Han once said, only half of the questions will be given. There must be 17 or 18 small tricks based on this jade compass. The next step in this article is up to the master brothers to freely play. However, after a few breaths of effort, a young man wearing a square scarf and a brown single coat loudly said, if you senior brothers go first, I'm afraid there won't be a chance for me to intervene. If you senior brothers see me on this path, it's okay if you can use it. If not, it's okay to start a new stove. This person's name is Shen Xianyong. He completed the 9 Yuan book over 4 years and is not considered outstanding among his disciples. Everyone smiled slightly, and Shen Xianyong was also quite honest. His words were partly self-deprecating and partly truthful. The competition of the power of light in this comparative test, as the difficulty gradually increases, it is indeed an awkward thing if later players cannot get in touch. Just the more skillful part of the performance in today's Joy games is slightly different from before. If the starting point given by the first person to showcase their skills is too low, the gathering loses its meaning. More than 20 gazes were fixed on Shen Xianyong on the stage, just to see if he was interested. After Shen Xianyong finished speaking, his wrist trembled, and the lake surged up like a fountain. His actions were no different from those of Han Taikang just now, absorbing a section of live water from Yuming Lake. But his movements are concise, and he also takes much less water than Han Taikang. In the blink of an eye, this pool of lake water condensed into a fist-sized ball of water, shining brightly like a pearl. Cheng Bumming murmured, did the jade bead fall on the plate? I have never tried it before. Shen Xianyong smiled and nodded at everyone, then turned his back and threw the water ball between his fingers into the air. Seemingly effortless, but this water ball flew extremely high, instantly turning into a spot the size of a sesame seed, almost imperceptible to the naked eye. After half a column of incense had passed, the water ball fell down again, and with a crisp sound, it landed unbiased on the plate without moving at all. The feeling of falling from high speed to instant stillness is not abrupt. Everyone cheered loudly. Transforming water into a plate, condensing water into beads, bouncing water droplets up and down into a jade plate. This technique may seem simple, but it implies exquisite control skills and elemental grasp. Firstly, both the jade bead and the jade plate are solidified with clear water, not truly solid. If the operator's skills are not yet advanced, they will inevitably break apart and explode into a puddle of water after collision. At present, the jade ball and jade plate are not only intact, but have not even shown any deformation or cracks, completely maintaining a rigid like ice. What's even more difficult is that this jade ball and jade plate are both pure and flawless, and solid, so their smooth surface is naturally no different from real ice hockey balls and ice plates. Even if the two collide without damage, as long as there is a slight uneven force, it is inevitable that they will slip out of the plate. End of this chapter. Chapter 10. Jade beads falling on a plate showing divine power, middle. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. Chapter 10. Jade beads falling on a plate showing divine power. Middle, the water droplet made by Shen Xianyong landed at the center of the jade plate. Firmly hold on, without deviating by half an inch. In the rules of passage, the so-called jade plate is not a flat mirror, but rather a plate that truly holds food, with a shallow bottom and a concave center on the slanted edge, forming a small inclination angle to prevent the jade beads from rolling out of the plate after falling off. The contestants only consider the principles of firmness and softness in the competition. If the jade bead and the jade plate can maintain the ball intact after collision, it can be considered a pass. It can be said that achieving this level is effortless for disciples of Chongsha Pavilion. Therefore, it is natural to increase the difficulty. Moreover, the hidden intention behind this jade bead as the title is that everyone present has witnessed the true selection 3 years ago, and their hearts are all clear. Shen Xianyong's jade bead landed right in the center of the jade plate. If the next person to take action casually condenses it into a jade bead and lands it on the plate, it may not be considered a success. Although Shen Xianyong was humble and took the lead, he also inadvertently set a certain threshold. It can be seen that he is not without a glimpse of the thoughts of his fellow disciples. In this way, everyone's water rose and their boats rose high. When Qing Buming, Qiao Xiuguang, Rong Changji, Ning Suchen, Zhong Zichang, and Ran Dongling took action, they could glimpse some secrets to some extent. For the vast majority of fellow disciples, it is necessary to seize the position of true biographies, and if one wants to defeat 4 of these 6 people. After waiting for a moment, someone sorted out their thoughts. A young man named Ji Xiefeng, with a yellow face and gray shirt, took a step without hesitation and condensed it into a water ball, throwing it into mid-air. When the water ball falls, it seems to tilt slightly and almost falls outside the jade plate. It raises suspicions whether he accidentally made a mistake or if his own actions were inadequate. After a slight imperceptible muffled sound, everyone fixed their eyes and saw that the water ball landed steadily on the northernmost edge of the jade plate. The center of gravity of the water ball completely overlapped with the edge of the jade plate. If it deviated by 1.5 centimeters, it would roll out of the plate. When everyone saw this scene, colorful voices kept coming. Ji Xiefeng also bowed his hands to his fellow disciples present one by one, with a slight smile on his face. Just this time, although everyone cheered, their expressions were mostly a bit subtle. A faint playful smile appeared on the faces of Rong Changji, Zhong Zichang, and others. In this kind of gameplay of martial arts, the people who come to an end have only 3 choices. Either they can't bear it and admit defeat openly, either simply copy the textbook and fool around, hoping for a result without merit or error. The third option is to raise the weight and give the newcomers another army. However, Ji Xiefeng's actions were somewhat flattering. From a visual effect perspective, his water droplet was both dangerous and fell on the edge of the jade plate, seemingly surpassing Shen Xianyong, who had the pearl honestly placed on the plate. However, Shen Xianyong's water ball actually landed precisely at the center of the jade plate. There is actually no difference in difficulty between the center and the circumference. Therefore, Ji Xiefeng's move is suspected of taking advantage of the situation in vain. However, Ji Xiefeng's move gave others a clearer idea. Feng Tianqing, Song Pingquan, and Zhang Xianlong took turns, completely imitating Ji Xiefeng's approach and landing 3 water balls in the east, south, and west directions of the jade plate. Feng Tianqing and the other 3 achieved their spiritual form relatively late, and breaking through the return photo level was only a matter of 1 or 2 months. They thought they could still use the methods of Shen Xianyong and Ji Xiefeng in front of them, but they couldn't guarantee that anyone would come out and raise the threshold, so they might not be able to intervene, which would be like losing face for nothing. So I rushed to take the initiative. Fortunately, the 3 of them made it clear that they were just trying to negotiate a draw and did not have the mentality of taking advantage like Ji Xiefeng. Although no one cheered, everyone nodded together to show that they had passed the test. Feng Tianqing and his 3 companions also knew that there was not much hope at the Zhenjuan selection meeting, but they tried their best and deserved it. I am also very calm about the last ambiguous amusement party in front of me. Seeing the 5 jade beads occupying 5 positions and settling down, the later ones had to think a bit. The special position in this plate, except for the center point, is also the circumference. The diameter of this jade plate is more than 2 feet, while the diameter of each person's condensed water ball is only 3 inches. If we all follow the methods of Ji Xiefeng, Feng Tianqing, and others, the edge of this jade plate will be enclosed in a circle, which is enough to hold 20 or 30 jade beads. But no one is willing to do so. The actions of Feng Tianqing and the others were not at all covert, but in fact, they were already too candid. He achieved his spiritual form relatively late among the 3, and others could not be harsh on him. But if the next one still follows the same method, then it will be a sincere apology. At this moment, a woman with a single bun on her head, dressed in a purple long skirt, and a beautiful face stepped forward. Her face was calm and composed, and she gave a faint smile to her fellow disciples. With a wave of her hand and wide sleeves dancing, water droplets flew like shattered jade, exuding a unique charm. This woman is Ran Dongling. In the blink of an eye, the condensed water ball quickly fell down. Everyone fixed their eyes and saw that the water ball was stacked on top of the water ball located in the center of Shenxianyong, creating a bead on top of a bead. Everyone present cheered loudly. Stacking beads on top of each other, even if the power is extremely precise, the inertia when falling is too great. As long as the water ball and jade plate below oscillate slightly, they will immediately miss. With everyone's eyesight, it was evident that just as these 2 water balls were about to collide by a millimeter, the falling water ball quickly slowed down and gently knocked against the water ball below. However, at this moment, the timing was extremely clever. If it were a lower-level disciple of the true Qi realm, it would be difficult to see the clues. This completely opened up everyone's thinking, and Zhen Xiaohua took a step forward and smiled, saying, "Sister Ran, don't come up with a clever trick. Junior brother, I am a fool, so I can only recite the text." After saying that, he waved his hand and condensed it into a water droplet, falling into the air and steadily landing on the water droplet of Ran Dongling, forming a 3-bead superposition situation. His movements were like flowing clouds and flowing water, completed in one go. The people present were impressed, and with each addition of a bead, the difficulty naturally increased. Following the same pattern without losing face. At the moment, 6 or 7 people shot in succession, but in a quarter of an hour, they folded a string of 8 bintangulu. During this process, one person took action, while the others put away their previous leisurely appearance and stared intently at the falling jade bead. Guiwujiu's heart twitched, and it was only here that the joy tour was considered exciting. The technique of stacking beads on beads can be described as exquisite, and the depth of his mind makes Guiwujiu unable to help but admire it. The hidden intention of exploring the truth and falsehood hidden in this gathering is fully demonstrated through this technique. Although 7 or 8 people in a row seem to effortlessly accomplish this. But the difference is obvious. Like Ran Dongling and 1 or 2 other outstanding individuals, the water droplets they controlled quickly tended to come to a standstill at the moment of imminent collision, merging directly above the bead on the plate. Subtle differences are almost indistinguishable to the naked eye. But those with slightly weaker skills dare not do so, as they have to withdraw their strength when there is still a distance of 3 to 5 minutes between the 2 water droplets. The weakest one of them adjusted in advance when the distance between the 2 beads was still about an inch. Even the naked eye could see a more abrupt deceleration process. Compared to each other, there is a clear distinction. In this way, everyone can finish the competition in the next round, without losing face or fearing difficulties on the surface, but a person with a heart can both see from it and see the level of each person's cultivation. This design can be said to be exquisite. Guiwujiu secretly glanced at Han Taikang. On the surface, it seemed that jade beads falling on the plate and stacked beads on the beads were the choices of Shen Xianyong and Ran Dongling, respectively. However, Guiwujiu always felt that all of this was expected by Han Taikong. Han Taikong was very alert to the gaze cast by Guiwujiu, and turned his head to lightly smile, as if it meant a lot. The next person to come on stage is wearing a light yellow shirt, tall and straight. This man was named Gong Jiwen. He nodded to the people on the court and made a bead of water as usual. He continued to play the role of overlapping heroes and delivered the 9th bead safely. Everyone's eyes were sharp, and when the 2 beads were still 3 points apart, Gong Nayan withdrew his strength in advance, transitioning from movement to stillness, and gently lowered them. This performance can be ranked between the 3rd and 4th among the disciples who have experienced it. This performance is roughly the same as everyone's estimate of his strength. Cheng Buming stood up and took a step forward. The few who have not yet played are all shivering in their hearts. In the eyes of the vast majority of people, Cheng Buming's strength should be the crown of the crowd. In the past, he always made the final appearance in such theatrical performances. If he plays any new tricks and increases the difficulty too much, it may make the rest of the people feel overwhelmed. Cheng Buming seemed to understand everyone's intentions. With a slight nod, he casually condensed into a droplet of water, clearly not intending to make any unexpected changes. He has always had a solitary demeanor and acted unexpectedly. At the moment when Cheng Buming was about to take action, Rong Changji suddenly spoke up and said, "Counting starts from 1 and ends at 9. The 9 beads on this jade plate are stacked together, which is already the extreme number. Moreover, the object that everyone will face in 10 days is not based on 9 numbers. If senior brother Cheng follows suit and stacks them together into 10 connected pieces, it may not be beautiful." Cheng Buming remained expressionless and paused to ponder for a moment before saying in a deep voice, "Junior brother Rong's words make sense." Among the undecided disciples, 3 or 4 complained in their hearts about Rong Changji's meddling. However, those who have dealt with it before do not have much pressure, but instead hide a bit of curiosity. The difficulty of stacking beads on beads is already quite high, and if there are any changes to be made, it is necessary to see what methods are available to achieve this. Cheng Buming did not think too much, his movements were extremely agile, his fingers were like a bow, and this water droplet quickly leaped out. This water droplet flew extremely high, but fell faster. However, in the blink of an eye, a little light grew from small to large, and approached everyone's view again. It silently landed on 9 water droplets, presenting a layered appearance of 10 beads. Everyone looked at each other. Cheng Buming clearly wanted to innovate, and everyone wanted to see his novel methods. Cheng Buming is not someone who doesn't keep his word. Rong Changji exclaimed in surprise, "Senior brother Cheng." Before he could finish speaking, Rong Changji's face suddenly changed. End of this chapter.